Good morning, everybody. Happy Victory Monday. Always good to get the week started off on the right foot. Always good to get the season started off on the right foot. And we certainly did that. Pretty good win yesterday over the Colts in Indianapolis. And I was thinking about how to approach the first contemplative video after that game. Because the video right after the game, you're just kind of going off of what initially stuck out to you. You're going kind of shallowly about what you saw out there. You're just looking at, well, that guy did good, that guy made that play, that guy didn't make that play. It's often informative, but you often miss out on some of the bigger picture stuff. So I was thinking about how could I talk about the Indianapolis game in a way that was a little more constructive to start off the week, because after making that initial post-game video, you have time to think about the game. You might rewatch some plays, you might review some stats, you get to talk about it, like the stream last night with you guys talking about the game for almost 2 hours. Very interesting stuff was gone over, and you start to hone in on certain things of particular interest to you. And the most interesting thing about this team in terms of new stuff and the way things are changing is probably the Shane Waldron offense. I think that no matter who you are as a Seahawks fan, you want to see what this Shane Waldron offense has for us and whether or not we can make it work and whether or not it's going to launch this team to the next level or if it's just going to crap out like some previous Seahawks offenses we've had. So we could talk about the results from yesterday because the results were pretty good. 28 points, one turnover that had nothing to do with the offense and had everything to do with Darius Leonard making a great play. No field goal attempts, 380 or so yards. Pretty good, pretty solid. But I don't think that that is the most informative way to approach talking about the new Shane Waldron offense. You guys know me. You guys know I like process over results. So let's talk about the process of the Shane Waldron offense and what things we're doing specifically that are different. And one thing from that game yesterday that really kind of stuck out to me was Gerald Everett, who did not put up monster stats yesterday, but the way in which we used him, I think, was informative and indicative of what we might see from this offense going forward. So I took some screenshots from the game, and we're going to go over them, and I'm going to point out some things that I think are interesting. Okay, so this is a screenshot of the game right at the start of the second quarter, and I have circled Gerald Everett. I have 7 pictures like this. All of them have Gerald Everett circled, and we're going to take a look at how he's lining up and what he's doing in the offense on these plays. Now, I'm going to highlight these 7 specific plays, but with possibly one exception, I am pretty sure that Gerald Everett lined up in these different formations at least twice each. In some cases, as many as 3 or 4 times throughout the game. So this was not just a one-off thing. We saw Gerald Everett be used in these different ways multiple times throughout the game. And that's the point I'm trying to make here. So this first screenshot is pretty simple. The tight end, Gerald Everett, is lined up inline base, is what I'm calling this, inline base, because you've got your 3 wide receivers, you've got your running back. Dwayne Eskridge was initially lined up on the outside, but he's in motion here because he's moving to the other side of the line of scrimmage. You can see Metcalf here. You can see Lockett up here. This is a very basic formation for a very basic way to line up if you're a tight end. You're just lining up in line. And in line means that you've got the offensive tackle immediately to your left or right. So you can see Brandon Shell is to the immediate left of Gerald Everett. So this is just inline base. This play was a play action screen pass to Gerald Everett, actually one of his 2 catches on the day. Everett faked blocking a defensive end for about half a second and then disengaged to catch a pass, and then he ran for 11 yards and a first down. So this is the first play that I wanted to look at. This is play number 2, and I'm calling this inline bunch because you can see that once again, Everett is lined up to the immediate left of the tackle, Dwayne Brown. However, you can see that we kind of have a bunch of receivers here with Metcalf and Lockett basically immediately flanking him. So it's a slight variation of that formation, and it's one example of ways in which we're varying our use of Gerald Everett. Now, this play was run with about 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and it was a play-action deep comeback to DK Metcalf, and Metcalf caught the ball across midfield and ended up with a gain of about 30 yards. Everett on this play actually went from the left side of the line of scrimmage here to the right side of the line of scrimmage and threw a block on a pass rusher. So he actually moved from the left side of the line to the right side of the line to block, which is interesting because he's a pass-catching tight end, but we use him as a blocker on this play. All right, so this is play number 3, and this was a touchdown that we scored in this game. And as you can see here, we have Gerald Everett lined up as a tight end. Again, he's in line. However, he is lined up to the outside of another tight end. So we actually have 2 tight ends on this side of the offensive line and 2 receivers up here. So Gerald Everett is lined up in almost a jumbo package in a way because there are 2 tight ends on this side of the line. But it's not a typical jumbo package because you still have 2 receivers at the top. There are no receivers on Everett's side of the field. So you've got 2 receivers on the left side of the offense, and you've got 2 tight ends on the right side of this offense. Now, this play ended with a slant to DK Metcalf for a 15-yard touchdown. Everett on this play ran sort of a corner end zone fade this way on the right side of the field. And I don't think Wilson ever really looked at him, but that's because Metcalf immediately was open for the touchdown. So that's another way in which Everett is being used. And again, he's lining up in line, but that's definitely not the only way we used him in this game. So let's go to the next one here. And this is what I call inline outside. It's kind of like the previous play, in that you have Everett lined up to the immediate right of Will Dissly, who is lined up to the immediate right of Brandon Shell, so it's kind of like a jumbo package. This is a little more traditional, though, because you only have 1 receiver, and he's basically lined up in the slot. And this is actually a running play, unlike the DK Metcalf touchdown that I just showed. So on this play, there was a handoff right tackle to Carson, and he would run for 33 yards. This was the 3rd and 1 play with about 3 minutes left in the first quarter. Carson was able to squeeze through a hole and ran for 33 yards. And Everett actually did some run blocking on this play on a defensive back. So clearly we don't feel the need to take Everett out of the game in obvious run situations. We feel like he's able to block. You can see Tyler Mabry's up here as well. And yeah, Everett actually did a healthy amount of blocking out there yesterday, and he seemed to conduct himself pretty well. So those are 4 different ways in which we lined up Gerald Everett in line. And most of the time you will see a tight end line up in line because that's traditionally what tight ends have done. However, the devil is in the details, and there were other ways in which we lined up Everett as well that I think are very interesting that we'll go ahead and get into now. All right, so this play takes place near the end of the 3rd quarter, 3rd and 4. Seahawks are up 21-10, and Everett lines up not in line, but pretty close to being in line. You can see him here, circled in red. He is a slot receiver on this play, but he's on the same side as another slot receiver, so you could almost call this the inside slot man. And on this play, Everett would run a short slant over the middle, just run up the field a couple yards and then slant inside. This ended up being an incomplete pass on a streak route to a double-covered DK Metcalf. It was the one play that we're looking at today that wasn't a success. But you can see that Everett is lining up as a wide receiver here, which is interesting. And it's not the only interesting way in which we used Metcalf on Sunday. So inside slot here If you take a look at this sixth play, you can see that he's lined up in the middle slot. You can see that he's still in the slot, but this time he is outside of Tyler Lockett, but he's inside of, I believe this is Freddie Swain. So he's in the middle of a bunch. So it's not a huge change, but it's very interesting that we find all these different ways in which to align Gerald Everett in order to make it harder on defenses. These are the kinds of things that can confuse a defense and create plays where there otherwise would not be a play. So this play was on the first Seattle drive, the first third down, and it ended in a Wilson scramble for 11 yards and a first down, kind of a broken play that ended up producing good yards. But Gerald Everett actually ran a streak on this play, basically just streaking down the left side of the field straight. So that's another way in which we utilized Gerald Everett's interesting skill set. And this final one is very, very interesting because he lined up this way on 2 of Seattle's touchdowns. Wide. As you can see here, Gerald Everett is lined up as a wide receiver, and there is no receiver to his outside, and he's lined up outside the numbers. He is the outside wide receiver on this play. He's, in fact, the only one who's lined up outside the numbers. This play was the first Seattle touchdown of the game. It ended in a streak route to Tyler Lockett over the middle. I think you guys all remember the play, the Willie Mays catch, the Ken Griffey Jr. catch, 23-yard touchdown. Everett, for his part, ran a short slant over the middle. And it's also worth noting that Everett lined up in this same place and ran basically the same route on the touchdown pass to Gerald Everett. So 2 of Seattle's touchdowns came with Gerald Everett lined up on the outside, which you don't see tight ends lined up on the outside that often, but it was a big part of his game in LA, and it looks like it's going to continue to be a big part of it over here. And that's all I really wanted to go over in this video today. Just take a look at the different ways in which we utilize Gerald Everett, because I understand the stats were not big. 2 catches for 20 yards and a touchdown. If he were to only catch 2 passes for 20 yards in every game this season, I think we would be pretty disappointed in that. But if you take a look at the ways in which we're using him to keep defenses on their heels, and the ways in which defenses are not able to assume where he's going to line up, because this last one is especially a weapon. This last one is especially a unique weapon because most tight ends don't do this. Most tight ends can't do it that well, but Everett can. Everett caught a touchdown lined up wide. So this is one of the things about the Waldron offense that is definitely exciting. If you're looking for positive things to take away from yesterday other than just the end result of 28 points and a win, then I think this would be one of those things. Gerald Everett was brought in this offseason because of the promise of being able to use him in the new Shane Waldron offense to kind of do Swiss Army knife stuff. He can line up in line, he can line up in the slot, he can line up outside, and he can line up within a bunch of different variations within that. We saw that against Indy, and you would think that as the season goes on, it only gets more complex and multifaceted. Maybe eventually you see Gerald Everett kind of lined up as a fullback or even a halfback. Who knows? But that is the initial taste for me of the Shane Waldron offense. This was one of the things I was most interested to see. And regardless of whether or not I liked the result, which the result was quite good, I like this process. I like the ways in which we utilized the talent that we had. And if Everett continues to be a versatile weapon throughout the season, lining up all over the offense like this, then I think good things are going to happen. See you guys later today. Peace out. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think down below.